Thank you, Megan Good. God bless you. Coming to save that slave. Guilty. Part of that contract is you do understand whenever we want to take you down, we can, right?
The $50 million bombshell. What would it take for one of the most charismatic voices in sports to suddenly vanish from the spotlight? A $50 million lawsuit, a deleted Instagram rant, or maybe a series of explosive allegations that left fans wondering if the man they admired was hiding a sinister side? Shannon Sharpe, former NFL legend turned beloved sports commentator, didn't just face a scandal, he got hit with one of the most jaw-dropping lawsuits in recent celebrity history. A young woman, identified only as Jane Doe, came forward with allegations so graphic, so disturbing, that they sent shockwaves through the sports world and beyond. The accusations? Control, coercion, secret recordings, and 2 separate acts of violent assault, all allegedly committed by a man the public thought they knew. But here's the part that raised even more eyebrows. Just days after court filings dropped and whispers of incriminating footage began to swirl, everything vanished. The lawsuit was abruptly settled. The case was closed, no trial, no jury, no full story. So what really happened behind the scenes? Why did Sharpe's accuser walk away so quickly after demanding $50 million? And is this just the beginning of a deeper legal storm involving more women, more lawsuits, and more reputational wreckage? Let's break it down, because what you're about to hear is far more than a scandal. It's a case study in how the powerful silence the courtroom without ever proving their innocence. The gym encounter that started it all. It all began in a place that's supposed to be safe. Your neighborhood gym. Jane Doe was 19, young, focused, and just trying to stay in shape like anyone else in Los Angeles. What she didn't expect was that someone 3 decades her senior would become fixated on her and refuse to take no for an answer. That man? Shannon Sharpe. According to the lawsuit, Sharpe spotted Jane at the gym and began watching her during workouts, not in passing, not casually, but with an intensity she described as intimidating. She claimed that every time she turned around, he was there, watching, following, waiting. Eventually, he approached her. And it wasn't just a polite conversation. The filing says Sharpe insisted she give him her number. Not asked. Insisted. And when she hesitated, he didn't stop. He kept pressing. Day after day, call after call, message after message. The texts, the phone calls, the constant pressure, it was relentless. Jane says she felt worn down, harassed, hunted, and eventually she gave in. Not because she wanted to, but because she felt like she couldn't make him stop any other way. And here's where things get even more unsettling. Before they even met up outside the gym, Sharpe allegedly demanded she sign an NDA. Let that sink in. Before a first date, before a single moment alone. He wanted her silence in writing. She refused. Over and over again, she refused. But the pressure didn't stop. Not from the texts, not from the invitations, and not from him. Eventually, she says, he dropped the NDA demand, but the damage was done. That red flag was waving from the very beginning. Still, she went to his house, and according to the complaint, what started as an uncomfortable courtship would spiral into something darker, something dangerous. But that was only the beginning, because what came next would shatter the line between a rocky romance and a calculated pattern of control. Consent or control. The dark turn. At first glance, it might have looked like just another complicated relationship, an older celebrity and a younger woman, 30 years apart. But once Jane Doe stepped into Shannon Sharpe's world, the rules of normal relationships no longer applied. The lawsuit doesn't shy away from calling it what it was: toxic, manipulative, and built on power dynamics that left Jane feeling trapped. She says Sharpe quickly insisted their relationship be exclusive. No discussion, no negotiation. He laid down the terms, and she was expected to follow them. But it didn't go both ways. Because while Sharpe demanded loyalty, he allegedly offered none in return. Jane claims she caught him in lies. Lies about his whereabouts, lies about other women. And yet, every time she confronted him, things escalated. Not with honesty, but with hostility. By October 2024, she says his behavior had taken a chilling turn. He allegedly began pressuring her to let him record their sexual encounters. Sometimes she agreed, but other times she didn't even know the camera was rolling. And according to her claims, Sharpe shared those videos without her permission, without her knowledge, with other people. That's not just betrayal. That's a weaponization of intimacy. Even worse, she says he used their physical relationship to exert control, repeatedly telling her he wanted to do things to her that would make no other man want her. Think about that. The intent wasn't love or even lust. It was sabotage, a psychological operation designed to isolate and diminish her. And still, somehow, it got darker. The filing claims that Sharpe figured out how to gain access to her apartment complex without her knowledge or consent. He could show up when he wanted. He could get in without being invited. He made it clear that what she wanted didn't matter, only what he wanted. This wasn't just about a failed romance. This was about domination, surveillance, fear. What began as an obsession at the gym was now evolving into something far more dangerous. And the worst part? She says no one else knew what was really happening. Until the Las Vegas trip, when everything crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The Vegas assault claims, by the fall of 2024, what began as emotional control had spiraled into something far more terrifying. According to Jane Doe's lawsuit, things took a horrific turn during a trip to Las Vegas, a city known for secrets, but this time, the silence came with scars. She claims that in October 2024, Shannon Sharpe violently assaulted her, twice. In chilling detail, she described being sexually violated and sodomized, despite pleading with him to stop. He ignored her. She says he overpowered her, and when it was over, there was no remorse, no apology, just silence. It wasn't an isolated moment of rage, she claims. It was the culmination of months of manipulation and power plays. And it didn't end in Vegas. She says it happened again in January. Another violation, another traumatic encounter, another moment that left her broken and confused about how a man so admired by the public could allegedly treat her like she was disposable behind closed doors. In the lawsuit, she laid out two official causes of action: sexual assault and battery, intentional infliction of emotional distress. But reading between the lines, there was a third: a cry for someone, anyone, to listen. Sharpe, through his attorney, denied everything, called it the classic definition of blackmail, brushed off the allegations as calculated lies. But if it was all fiction, why did she describe such specific escalating behavior? Why did she keep records? Why were there references to secret videos and NDAs before anything ever turned physical? And most importantly, why did someone with nothing to gain risk going up against a millionaire media figure, knowing the public would likely turn against her? These were the questions Sharpe's team tried to discredit, but Jane Doe's claims were now out in the open, and the damage to Sharpe's carefully crafted image had already begun. And while his lawyers called it blackmail, Sharpe's next move raised even more eyebrows, because his first public reaction wasn't legal. It was personal, it was loud, and it was soon deleted. Public backlash and deleted defenses. Shannon Sharpe has never been known to stay quiet. So, when the allegations went public, he did what many celebrities do when cornered. He logged onto social media and started talking. But what he said only added fuel to the fire. In a now-deleted Instagram video, Sharpe lashed out, calling the entire lawsuit a shakedown. He looked directly into the camera and challenged the narrative. Instead of editing clips, he said, "Post the full video." You know what happened? He painted himself as the real victim, trapped in a setup targeted by someone trying to manipulate the media for fame and money. It was raw, defiant, and unmistakably defensive. But within hours, the video vanished. Why? That's the question everyone started asking. Was it legal pressure? Was it his team doing damage control? Or was it a rare moment of clarity, realizing that speaking emotionally in the heat of a public scandal was the worst thing he could have done? Either way, the internet never forgets. Clips circulated, screenshots spread like wildfire, and fans began to divide. Some backed him, others were horrified by how quickly he went from denying the allegations to threatening defamation lawsuits of his own. But it didn't stop there. He also posted on X, formerly Twitter, claiming he was stepping away from the public eye to focus on family and deal with the false and disruptive allegations. He doubled down on his innocence. He insisted it was all a smear campaign. But still, he stayed quiet about one key detail: the woman's claims of recorded videos. He never said whether they existed or not. He never addressed the NDA pressure. And for someone claiming full transparency, those silences spoke volumes. Meanwhile, sports media began to stir. Rumors swirled that Sharpe was quietly stepping back from his ESPN duties. No official suspension, no firing, just distance. And if you thought the deleted video and vague denials would calm things down, think again, because the court was about to get involved. And what happened next would leave the judge questioning whether anyone was telling the truth. Legal confusion and courtroom chaos. If you thought things couldn't get messier, the courtroom drama said, "Hold my gavel." On July 9th, all eyes turned to a Las Vegas courtroom where Shannon Sharpe and Jane Doe were scheduled to appear for a pivotal hearing. The stakes were high, motions were on the table, and observers expected sparks to fly. But the courtroom sat nearly empty. Not a single representative showed up for Jane Doe. The judge was visibly frustrated. Legal experts watching the case in real time raised eyebrows. How could the plaintiff's team miss a hearing this important? Was the case falling apart before it even got started? But then came the twist. Tony Busby, the firebrand attorney representing Jane Doe, claimed the whole thing was a misunderstanding. He said both sides had already agreed to postpone the hearing and that his absence was intentional, not negligent. According to Busby, there was no need to show up because everyone had already decided to hit the brakes. Sharpe's team confirmed the delay, but not without consequences. They publicly apologized to the court for wasting its time, claiming there was a mutual agreement among counsel to push things back by 45 days. In other words, the legal teams may have been communicating, but no one bothered to tell the judge. The result? A courtroom left in limbo. A case that was supposed to move forward instead stalled. And behind the scenes, the clock was ticking. Because a 45-day extension doesn't just buy time, it buys leverage. And both sides knew it. In legal battles like this, every delay is a chess move. More time means more room to negotiate, to leak stories, to apply public pressure, and sometimes to quietly disappear a problem altogether. So while the public speculated about who was lying and who was stalling, something else was happening off camera. And just 9 days later, that silence exploded, with news that the entire $50 million case had been settled behind closed doors. No trial, no testimony, just a check and a signature. The sudden settlement. And just like that, it was over. On July 18th, less than 2 weeks after that chaotic courtroom no-show, Tony Busby posted a carefully worded update on Instagram. The tone? Respectful? Polished. Almost corporate. He announced that the case had been resolved through protracted and respectful negotiations. The lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice, meaning Jane Doe couldn't refile it again. The matter was closed, legally at least. No apology, no admission of guilt, no courtroom drama, just silence and a settlement. So, what changed? Why would a woman who demanded $50 million suddenly agree to walk away without ever seeing the inside of a courtroom? According to celebrity attorney Bradford Cohen, the answer isn't complicated, it's financial. In his words, this wasn't about guilt or innocence. This was about math. Cohen says Sharpe likely faced two roads: either spend millions fighting the case in court, risking reputational fallout and dragged out discovery, or pay a much smaller amount to make it disappear quietly. It's not justice, it's strategy. And when you consider what's at stake, endorsement deals, media contracts, public image, settling becomes the cheaper option, especially if the evidence is murky and the public is already distracted by the next scandal. Cohen also raised another point. The settlement wasn't just quiet, it was suspiciously quiet. There were no follow-up interviews, no media appearances, not even a vague statement from Sharpe's camp declaring victory. Instead, there was just a muted message. The matter has been resolved. That's not closure. That's a cover. And for fans watching from the sidelines, it raised an uncomfortable question. Was justice served, or was it silenced? Because if Jane Doe was telling the truth, she never got to speak it in court. And if she wasn't, then Sharpe paid millions to bury something that never should have seen the light of day in the first place. Either way, someone won. But it wasn't the public. And if you thought the worst was behind Sharpe, the next woman waiting in the wings was about to make her presence known with a $14 million lawsuit of her own. Michelle Evans, the second lawsuit. Just when Shannon Sharpe thought he could close the door on one legal nightmare, another one swung wide open. Because long before Jane Doe's accusations made headlines, there was Michelle Evans, a name that had quietly lingered in court documents since 2023. Unlike the Jane Doe case, this one didn't explode overnight. It burned slowly, methodically, and it's still burning. Evans isn't anonymous. She's not hiding behind initials or redacted filings. She's representing herself. And she's suing Shannon Sharpe for $14 million, claiming his public actions caused her irreparable emotional and psychological harm. But this case is different. Michelle Evans alleges that she was subjected to non-consensual encounters, that the trauma caused her to suffer from severe PTSD, anxiety, and depression. But her lawsuit doesn't stop there. It goes even deeper. She says Sharpe publicly humiliated her, that his statements, online and in the media, were calculated lies designed to make her look unstable, obsessed, and dangerous. In fact, one of the most shocking claims in her court filings involves Sharpe's April 2025 public statement, where he allegedly accused her of attempting to murder her husband in pursuit of a relationship with him. Yes, you read that right. Evans says this outrageous allegation led to real-world consequences: death threats, public harassment, and people online labeling her a killer. And unlike the Jane Doe lawsuit, this case has not been settled. Sharpe's legal response? Denial. Full stop. He claims it was Evans who was the aggressor, that she stalked him, that she was manipulative, threatening, and obsessed. He even submitted a sworn affidavit, accusing her of sending harassing messages, manipulating narratives, and weaponizing the legal system. But Evans wasn't backing down. In a new filing, she accused Sharpe of continuing to defame her, even after the initial lawsuit. She called his actions malicious, reckless, and part of a broader effort to destroy her reputation in the public eye. She even included charts and documentation, allegedly proving how his behavior affected her mental health and personal life. And here's what makes this case even more alarming. It didn't fade when the Jane Doe case was settled. If anything, it gained momentum. Because now, with one woman publicly silenced by a private agreement, Evans stands as the last person still dragging Sharpe into a courtroom. And this time, there may be no quiet exit. But behind both lawsuits looms a bigger question. Is Shannon Sharpe just another high-profile target in a new age of celebrity shakedowns? Or is he the common denominator in a growing pattern of disturbing allegations? The reputation war. Who really wins? In the court of law, Shannon Sharpe might be walking free. But in the court of public opinion, the verdict is still out. This wasn't just a legal battle, it was a war over identity, legacy, and reputation. And while the lawsuit is closed, the questions surrounding Sharpe are louder than ever. Is he a victim of targeted extortion, like his attorney claims? A celebrity caught in the crosshairs of opportunistic lawsuits fueled by media frenzy and massive payout demands? Or is he a master manipulator, using his fame, resources, and charisma to silence the women brave enough to speak out? To his supporters, the sudden settlement with Jane Doe was just damage control, a way to stop the bleeding and return to the spotlight. To his critics, it looked like something far more calculated: hush money. And when you add Michelle Evans to the equation, the waters get even murkier. Two separate women, two lawsuits, two sets of disturbing claims, both centered around emotional manipulation, reputation destruction, and alleged abuse of power. Still, Sharpe remains a dominant voice in sports media. His charisma hasn't dulled, his platform hasn't disappeared. And as of now, ESPN hasn't completely distanced itself from him either. But here's what makes this case different. It's not about guilt, it's about narrative control. From the moment Jane Doe filed her lawsuit, this was never going to be a trial. It was a PR chess match. And in the modern world of celebrity, that's often more important than a courtroom win. Sharpe deleted posts, backtracked in statements, pledged to devote time to his family. But in reality, every move he made seemed focused on preserving his brand, not clearing his name. And what about Tony Busby, the attorney known for aggressively pushing high-stakes civil cases against mega celebrities? Critics say he's built a reputation not on justice, but on pressure. Some even accuse him of turning real trauma into a business model. Others say he's the only one bold enough to take on powerful men. So who's telling the truth? That depends on who you ask. For now, Sharpe appears to be regaining footing. But one more accusation, one more lawsuit, and the entire house of cards could collapse. Because in today's world, reputation isn't just your image, it's your currency. And the wrong allegation at the wrong time can bankrupt even the most untouchable star. And while the headlines might fade, the whispers never really stop. The cost of silence. Shannon Sharpe didn't lose in court. He never stood trial. There was no jury, no cross-examination, no closing arguments. Just a quiet settlement, a few social media posts, and a public left to connect the dots. But in the world of modern scandals, silence doesn't always mean innocence. Sometimes it means strategy. Sometimes it means leverage. And sometimes it means someone with power chose to write a check instead of risk the truth coming out. Whether you believe Jane Doe, Michelle Evans, or Sharpe himself, one thing is clear. The public still doesn't know the full story, and maybe they never will. But that's the danger, isn't it? When influence and money become the loudest voices in the room, justice doesn't always speak first. It waits, it watches, and often it fades into the background, drowned out by PR teams and legal jargon. Sharpe says he'll return to ESPN for the NFL preseason. But what happens if another name steps forward? What happens if one settlement leads to another? What happens if this isn't over? Because in a post-Diddy, post-Me Too, post-everything era, the real damage isn't always done by the accusations. It's done by what gets buried right after. So ask yourself, did Shannon Sharpe just dodge a bullet? Or did the world just watch a silent confession play out in real time? Either way, the game has changed. And this playbook, it's still being written.